He's been picked out. Socks down to his ankle. Picks out Stansfield. That's the hat-trick. And that's what dreams are made of.
Hello and welcome to the final episode of Park Life, the official Exeter City podcast. What a season it has been. We've had our ups and we've certainly had our downs, but in the end, after a campaign which has tested our resolve, we've come through it with flying colours. In today's episode, we'll reflect on what has been a rollercoaster of a season and look ahead to the 2024-25 season, which is just a few months away. For the final time this season, let's get straight into it. Coming up in today's show, we thought we'd save the best till last. City manager Gary Caldwell joins the show for a deep dive reflection on all the key decisions made throughout the campaign. We also get some fan opinion to close the series as we ask you about the journey we've taken together from Wycombe on the opening day all the way to Oxford on the last. First up, Gary Caldwell sits down to review the 2023-24 League One season. Gary, welcome to Park Life. We thought we'd save the best till last, so thanks so much for coming on. How are you feeling at the end of what has been a whirlwind of a season?
Yeah, obviously now we're feeling really good. We have finished the season really strongly. We still have something to achieve in the last game, a potential 10th place finish. Or even top half would be an amazing achievement for the club, for this group of players. So yeah, 2 more days training, preparation, and then the last game of the season, and hopefully a really special day at SJP where, you know, the supporters are coming out in incredible numbers again, a full house, and hopefully we can, you know, send them away for one last time this season happy.
Yeah, exactly. Just like they have all season. I guess it's a campaign which has thrown up plenty of challenges, tested our resolve at times. But in the end, we have cemented our League One status for another season. Not to be underestimated how difficult that would be, but it must be something that you're incredibly proud of.
Yeah, we are. I think, you know, going way back to the start, we always knew it was going to be a difficult season. I think everyone talks about second season syndrome when you go into a different league. The first season is new, it's different. I think teams don't know a lot about us, and that can make us a kind of unknown quantity. And we had a really successful first season back, but that second season is always difficult. And then also who we lost in the summer, you know, big academy players who were amazing players for the football club, going on to different things. And then obviously selling Sam Nombe, you know, late in the window, for an amazing amount of money for this football club, which, you know, can set us up not just for this season but for future years. So having to deal with all of that and rebuilding a new squad, we always knew it was going to be challenging, but we always felt that, you know, if we got time to kind of get those players together and build a team that could understand each other, that could play together, then we always felt we could have a really successful season, and, you know, that has proved to be the case.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll dive a little bit further into some of those things that you mentioned. I think now is a really good time to reflect on the season as a whole and get a bit of insight into some of the decisions that were made throughout the campaign. And I guess that actually starts with how you were preparing for this season at the tail end of last season. You mentioned some of the players that we were losing: Archie Collins, Josh Key, Jay Stansfield, who I know was on loan, but it felt inevitable that he would be off at the end of the year. How much of a challenge was it to replace some of those players who were essentially performing, I guess, at championship standard for a lot of last season?
Yeah, and Giovanni Brown is in that list as well, you know, and a lot of them attacking players where, you know, I think that is the most important part of the pitch is always scoring goals. The most difficult aspect of the game is scoring goals, and we lost a lot of creativity, a lot of goal scorers. So it is always challenging, but I always think, you know, as a football club, you have to evolve. You have to, you know, be ready for those moments where you know, great players that will be remembered in this club's history forever. When they leave, you have to replace them, and you have to move on, and you have to build, you know, a different team. You have to have different heroes in amongst the fan group where these new players come to the fore. And that was challenging over the summer. It didn't happen straight away. I think we're at a level now, or we're competing at a level where financially we can't, you know, outbid these teams. So we have to sell the players a different a different challenge. We have to sell the players a different dream, that when they come to our club, we can give them something different. So to do that takes a bit more time. And like I said, thankfully, over the window, I felt like we built a really strong squad in terms of quality. At the end of the summer window, I felt like we were a little bit light in terms of numbers. And if we had injury crises, we could be in a bit of trouble. We managed to kind of correct that in January. And I think we finished the season with a really strong competitive squad and competition all over the park.
Yeah, well, exactly that. And I know you mentioned those players who did leave the club. We ended up replacing them, and with great quality too. We know that at Exeter City, when it comes to recruitment, it often feels like we get told no a lot more than we get told yes. But in the end, we did manage to assemble a really good group of players that not only were fantastic on the pitch, but also had these really good personal connections with each other. And that's something that is quite difficult to assemble in modern football, right?
Yeah, and it takes time. You know, when you put players together in your head or on a tactics board, that's one thing. Then getting those players to gel together day in, day out at the training ground, to connect within the team, takes time, and you have to build those relationships with those players as a staff, but then those players have to connect together to produce performances and develop an understanding of how we want to be as a football team, the behaviours we want to show as a football team, but then also, you know, how they interact in difficult moments, how they help each other, how they support each other. That all takes time, and I think it's great when you see over the course of the season, you see that happening in front of your eyes, and you see now, you know, a team that in difficult moments is really, really together, really committed to each other, and you see in the good moments after games, you know, that connection amongst not just the team but the team and the supporters, and it's a brilliant thing to see, and it's great when that kind of comes together, and it has done it in the latter parts of this season.
I think we should probably focus on each different stage of the season now. And I guess that takes us back to pre-season, which was pretty successful. And I think a lot of fans started to get excited, especially after that Coventry performance. But still, when we headed into that Wycombe game, a lot of the so-called pundits, whatever you want to call them, they were pretty scathing about our chances of staying in League One this season, at least some of them. What were your expectations for the season ahead of the opening game?
Yeah, we don't listen to pundits. We focus on process. We focus on, you know, like you said, how we want to be as a football team. I think since I've came to the club, there's been a big change in the style of play. I have, you know, a real belief in possession-based football. I have a real belief in attacking football, and that is difficult, I think. But once you get it right, I think you can be very successful with that. And I think we've shown that with that possession-based football against direct teams in this league, we haven't lost a game. And we've shown that when we get that right, we can control our own destiny almost. And even against the bigger teams, we can cause these teams problem with the way that we want to play the game. It is more difficult, I think, to kind of, like I said, it's those connections and relationships have to be really clear and that understanding. But I think now we have a team, you know, that from that Wycombe game, and I laugh because everyone says we were amazing against Wycombe, and I thought we weren't great on the day, because we have certain things that we look at in terms of stats and numbers, and like I said, how we want the game to be played. We didn't actually carry it out as well as we could have. We were clinical in both boxes. I thought we were fantastic. Obviously, the goals we scored and how we defended the box was amazing. But that bit in the middle, I think, has evolved through the season, and now I see a team, especially if I go back to Saturday, and how that team has evolved through the season, how we can play different formations, how we can build in different ways, and that gives the opposition a really, you know, a difficult challenge against us. Do they press? Do they sit off? And because we can adapt, we can cause teams lots of problems. So that evolution throughout the season, from what I thought was a poor performance but a great result, has also been great to see.
Yeah, we followed up Wycombe with a couple of more decent performances. Carlisle, Reading, Burton, they ended up taking us top of the league and got some fans maybe a bit too excited. As a manager, how do you control that situation, knowing that, you know, inevitably we probably weren't going to stay there the whole season?
Well, you're trying to stay there. That is the aim, to be the best team we can be. But we understood that with I think the Carabao Cup run was a big factor in this. That with the extra games, with the pressure that put on the squad in terms of the numbers within the squad, then there was always a potential that players can get injured. And you see in the modern game nowadays, even at the elite level in the Premier League, where they have hundreds of staff, they have the best facilities, the best equipment, it's still impossible to control every single injury. So we try and control as much as we can from a physical point of view. And muscle injuries, we feel like we can control to a large extent. But when you are putting that sort of pressure on a thin squad, and you're asking players to play Saturday, Tuesday, then that takes its toll at some point. And ultimately, I think the bad run started because we lost some key players, and not just key players, key positions. So the big change for me was Dion Rankin and Ime Elmari Niskanen getting injured. It meant we had no right wing back. That then means you have to readjust certain things, and it just has a knock-on effect that then obviously affected us for quite a long period of time, and we went on a really difficult run.
Yeah, it certainly did. I don't want to just gloss over the Luton Town game, though, because that was absolutely huge and many people's highlight of the season. I remember I spoke to Demi after that game, and he just told me that there was so much confidence in the dressing room. I guess it's made a bit easier, considering that kind of came after a really good run of form. But how did you manage to coach that mindset into the players that they could pull off an upset against a Premier League club?
Yeah, I think what our job is to give them a game plan and to give them belief in that plan. So the Luton game was a really exciting one for me as a coach, when you're coming up against a Premier League team with, players who have real quality. They have probably an edge in terms of their physical quality in the team, their speed, their power. So we have to think tactically, how can we stop that? How can we come up with a game plan that, one, the players can understand, and two, they can then go and carry that game plan out. And I spent a lot of time on the Sunday afternoon. My missus was really getting on at me, because in the Sunday afternoon, when I was meant to be with them and the kids, I was, analysing Luton and looking at how we could stop them and how we could come up with a game plan to win. On the Monday, myself and Kev kind of coached that. We split the group up and coached that plan, and then brought them together so that they had, within the units, they had clear messages and clear understanding of how we were going to defend, which was, we defended with 6 players on the back line, which is, hasn't been done much. I remember watching the Jose Mourinho when he did it for Manchester United. When he was there, he used to play with a back 4 and ask the wingers to drop really deep. So it was something similar to that. We looked at the kind of principles that they used within that, and actually showed the players some clips of how we wanted them to defend, because we wanted our defenders, whilst they were on the back line, we wanted them to be really aggressive and come out with the Luton players. And I remember on the night, occasions, Will and Zach Jules, where they were pressing really high up the pitch, even though they were playing as defenders. So I think that's, for me, the big thing, that the players have always been open to this. They've always been flexible in how they can now attack games. And that was, a really special one, where you come up with a game plan. They carry it out perfectly. We scored the goal late on, and like I said, defended extremely well. And it was an amazing night at SJP, where, the first time we beat a Premier League team for 20 odd years, and put us into a round in the Carabao Cup that we hadn't been to for a while as well.
Well, exactly that, and a night that many fans will never forget. I guess after that Luton game, though, things did start to take a turn for the worst. You mentioned the 13-game winless run, falling down the division, facing the genuine threat of relegation, which was on a lot of fans' mind. I think it is only right to ask you about sort of your position during that run. You'll be more than aware that a lot of fans were calling for you to go. How do you actually deal with that mentally? Because you'd only been in the city for about a year. You're a long way from home. Did it get to you at all, or how did you manage to deal with that mentally?
I'm fortunate. I've been in football a long time, so, and I think I played for Celtic, and my period there kind of showed me how tough you need to be in terms of your mentality, in terms of it's not always going to be good in football. You have good and bad days, and you have to stick to your principles, keep working hard, and keep believing in what you do. So at that moment, I think as a whole football club, I think from the board to the staff, to the players, I think we showed that togetherness. There was obviously discussions with the board that what was happening, explaining the injuries, why we were in this position, what we needed to do to get out of it. And that communication, I think that two-way communication allowed me to just continue to do my job and keep working with the players and keep giving them the support that they needed at this time. Because I always think as well, players, they're not going out trying to lose, they're not going out trying to perform badly, and they need a lot of support at that time as well. And I think it was big that myself, the staff, every week we came back in after the game, we supported the players, we analysed performance, we looked at things we were doing well, because there was certain games there where we played really well and didn't get the rub of the green and didn't get obviously the result. But we kept to our process and we kept supporting the players. And I think that was a big thing, that we never lost the players in that period because of the way we were with them. We didn't blame anyone. We stuck to process, and that's how we got out of it.
Yeah, and eventually we did. I think it's fair to say, though, that I guess a lot of clubs around the country probably would have maybe shown you the door at some point during that run. I know that a few coaches were sacked during our winless run for shorter winless streaks. Ultimately, not sacking you turned out to be a brilliant decision, of course. Did you ever feel like they were likely to pull the trigger, or did you have the confidence that the board would stick by you? Did you ever really feel like your position was at threat?
Look, I've been sacked before, so I think as a manager, you understand that if you don't win football matches, then there will be a time that you're probably going to lose your job. But I think that, like I said, it was the communication. And I actually remember speaking to Nick Hawker and saying, like, I'll almost come to you when I think this isn't going to work. I think this football club is different. I think the way they treat managers is totally different to any other club I've been at. And as you can see from right across the leagues, they do have a tendency to support their manager, which has given them great success over the last 20 years, from obviously being in real difficult financial position to coming through the leagues and now thriving in League One. So I think that support is kind of warranted, or has shown that support is kind of led to better results, led to the club kind of coming out of that. And I think when you go through those difficult moments, I think you come out of it stronger. I think to just, when you have difficult moments, if you just give up and change, then you're almost kind of running away from it. I think when you go through it together, I think it creates a real strength that we have came through that together. And like I said, now we're thriving, but we know that a difficult moment will come again. And we have to, in those moments, be clear on what we're doing, have good communication, and get through those difficult moments together.
Yeah, exactly. And we did eventually get through those difficult moments, because there seemed to be a turning point around the sort of Wycombe game, I guess, on Boxing Day, which was a huge victory for the club. A lot of people say that Wilson Asalo's save, a penalty save, was that turning point. I guess I've spoken to a few different fans, a few different players about when they really feel the turning point was, or whether there really was a turning point. I reckon Stevenage away, at least the second half. But can you put your finger on a point where things really started to change?
For me, the most difficult moment and for me the turning point was half time at Stevenage away. Although obviously the Wycombe game, Vale save, I think was the big moment in terms of the result. But I remember being we go in like the showers when we're away from home. We try and find an area where myself, Kevin Perks, and Sam, the analyst, could kind of watch the clips and kind of discuss what the game was like, what we were going to do. Obviously, we just had a man sent off, and it was a big moment. We're 1-0 down away from home on a terrible run where we're going out in the second half with 10 men. We need to get it right. We need to be clear to the players on what's needed to get something from the game. We need to give them belief that they can go and get something from the game. So for me, that was the big moment that, second half, we score early, Yannick scores a brilliant goal, and then the players dig in. And I think when you see a team with 10 men who are on that run and they see the commitment and the desire and the togetherness, then we didn't look like a team that was struggling. We were a team that was very much together, that just wasn't getting the results probably a lot of our performances deserved in that time. And that was, for me, the big turning point.
Things really started to then improve in January. I know the board promised to back you. They made that very public. I think they might even admit that selling Sam Nombe late on in the summer without, a ready-made replacement probably could have been managed a bit better. It looked like a really difficult window to manage, and eventually you did get that striker and a few other players as well. But my God, it looked an incredibly difficult window to sort of put things together, right?
Yeah, January is always a horrendous window for any manager, for any club. It's a very quick window, but you have to be patient within that window because, clubs hold the player that maybe you want. You need so many things to fall into place for a signing to happen. But we were very patient. We were very clear on what we needed, and in the end, I think we done pretty well to put a squad together that created real competition. Every position then probably had two or three players that you could play in that position, and it really created a competition in training. And you could see right from the first day in February the quality and the levels of training went up a notch, and that for me has been a big aspect of why we have been better in the second half of the season.
And then I guess we come on to the present day, right? Ever since January, things have been pretty much just completely on the up. The most away points in the top tiers, sellout crowds at home, some really entertaining football on the pitch as well. It must be really nice to get the opportunity to enjoy the last few games of the season without necessarily having to worry about the threat of relegation anymore.
Yeah, I think it's great that we've done that. I think the big thing I've said, when we were on the run and people were saying 50 points, and I think we have to, as a club, just almost look at the next game and start to become a club that, yes, staying in this division is a massive achievement and should be almost the first task of the season. But it shouldn't be the only goal that we have. We have to continually look to get better. And that, for me, since we have got to 50 points, I've loved the mentality of the team, how they've kept winning. We've been on a 9-game unbeaten run now. They've kept performing at high levels, and that's how we have to be going into next season. Staying in this league is always going to be a big challenge for a club of our size, but it can't be the only goal. We have to try and look beyond that and continually look to improve.
No, exactly that. And I guess that leads me then to turning our heads to next season. It feels like the league is about to get even stronger with some great teams promoted from the league below and some giant clubs potentially falling out of the championship. I guess that does make planning for next season even more tricky because you'll have to compete with even more clubs or bigger clubs for those signings, and moving up and finding yourself in a decent league position is going to be made that little bit more difficult next year.
Yeah, it's always going to be challenging. Like I said, for a club of our size, with the finances we have, it's always going to be challenging. But I think what the board have shown is that they are continually trying to improve, and the budget has went up since I've been at the club, but we are still one of the lower budgets in the league. That should never be seen as a negative thing. That should be such a positive thing for our supporters, for our football club, that we are punching above our weight, and we have to continually do that every single season at this level. But like I said, it's not just about surviving. It has to be, how do we thrive at this level? How do we improve? So from last season finishing 15th, can we finish higher the next season? This season, hopefully, top half, potentially, top 10. How do we improve on that next season? And that process and that progression has to be a continual thing for this football club.
It certainly does. A couple more from me then, and I've got to ask, because if I didn't, the fans would kill me for this. Our loanees this year have been fantastic, both on the pitch and, of course, with the fans as well. Is there any chance we can get a couple of them back next year?
I'm desperately trying. We had this problem with Stano last year, where he obviously had a fantastic run at the end of the season, and he was one I actually went to Fulham to obviously thank them for loaning us Stano and kind of see Stano. But then that was the first time I met Luke Harris and tried to set the ball in motion for bringing him to the football club, which didn't come in the summer window, but eventually came in January window. So yeah, those conversations will happen. We are, really thankful to the clubs, Fulham, Chelsea, Aston Villa, Brentford, for loaning us these players. I think, we we look after them. I think we give them a great opportunity to play football. I think we play a style of football that suits, you know, these players for when they go back to their parent club. So I think we're a great loan club for them. And I think we've done, you know, when we have these players, I think we look after them, and we've done a lot for their careers, but they've also done a lot for us, because they especially this year, I think the quality of our loan players and the level of performance they've all reached at such a young age has been fantastic.
One last one from me then. We know that some players are leaving at the end of the season. We already know that Alex and Harry Kite are both going to be off. I guess for them and everybody in the team, Oxford is a great chance to put on a bit of a show and send fans away for the summer really happy and I guess leave on a really nice note.
Yeah, I think the last few games we've had, you know, the number one priority has always been to win. And then there's been other things within, you know, team selection. We're giving young players an opportunity in Jake Richards and Pedro Borges. Obviously, Alex was captain in his last home game that he's going to play at SGP. So I think it's important we do all these things, but ultimately the main priority on Saturday is winning. I think we should always kind of enjoy seeing our young academy players leave, as much as it's difficult to see those players leave. Like last year, Archie, Josh, and then you're seeing Alex and Katie this year. I think we should be proud of that we have developed those players. They're now going on to different things in their career, and they'll always be a part of Exeter City. So we should, you know, I think you see it now with Ollie Watkins in the Premier League. We should enjoy that as a club, and that should be a big thing for our football club when these players leave, that they're leaving as Exeter City legends, and they'll always be welcome back. So Saturday, a lot of different things going on, a lot of things in my head, but ultimately the main thing is we win the game, and hopefully, like you say, all the supporters go away happy after a successful season and excited about what's coming next season.
And a well-deserved holiday, I expect. Gary, thank you so much for your time. You've been fantastic, and thank you so much for your insight. Best of luck with the plans over the summer, of course. And thank you for coming on Park Life.
Thank you.
Now it's time to get some fan opinion to end the show. So here are City fanatics Rhys Morgan and Latoya Edgerton. So we're coming to the end of what has been a rollercoaster of a season, but our committed and loyal fans have stuck with us through thick and thin. From top of the league to the relegation zone, then back up to mid-table. This season has tested our resolve, but we've come through it and cemented our League One status for another year. Rhys, welcome to Park Life. Thanks so much for coming on. How do you reflect on our second season back in the third tier? It's been a rollercoaster.
I think roller coaster is the perfect word to use. You know, beginning of the season, lot of optimism. Hit January, starting to panic, thinking, you know, I was kind of happy. It was my third year at uni, and then we've pulled it back at the end. And it's been 2024 in particular has been quite an enjoyable beginning with Exeter in particular.
Latoya, welcome to Park Life. What's the word that you would use to describe the 2023-24 season for Exeter City?
I think the only word that comes to mind is roller coaster, because
it really is.
It's had the highest of highs and then the lowest of lows, and now we're kind of come out the other end of it. We know that we're safe, and it's just, you look back on it and you're like, wow, we really did all that.
I want to reflect on the whole season, though. So let's go all the way back to the start. And I think it's pretty understated, really, how much of a challenge it was going to be to replace some of the quality players who left the club last summer, including a few who've gone to really impress in the Championship this season. Josh Key has been a starter for Swansea, as has Stano and Nombe for Birmingham and Rotherham, respectively. Archie Collins has won a trophy with Peterborough. And Jack Sparks, the league title with Pompey. I think, you know, you might agree, a lot of credit has to go to Gary and the recruitment staff, Marcus Flitcroft and Malcolm Crosby, for identifying a set of players who could go on and actually improve on last season's finish.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always kind of had confidence in Gary and the signings he'd be able to bring in. I think he's got a lot of connections. I've always thought that he's kind of had that over Matt Taylor, like that he just had the connections. He's able to bring those people in. I mean, that might have just been blind faith at the time. I don't know. But as the signings started to come in over the summer, obviously we had some really interesting ones. I mean, obviously Rhys Cole, at the time, it was kind of like, oh, we've signed someone from non-league. Like, why would we do that? But He's kind of shown himself and proven himself to be one of our best players. He's been consistently amazing. And, you know, we would never have got him had it not have been for Gary Caldwell. Obviously, you said on the podcast previously when you had him on about how he just kind of got in touch with Gary, asked if he could come along to train in the summer. And then he proved himself to be so good that he got a contract. And now he's a full-time professional footballer again. So I think it's kind of little things like that that really have given us the advantage. And Reece has scored so many important goals as well. So yeah, it was kind of, once you got over the loss of certain players, and obviously it was likely that we're always going to lose Stano because he was just a lone player, and I think he's going to go on to a lot of bigger and better things. But once you kind of get over that heartbreak, you kind of just have to familiarise yourself with the new players and, you know, see what they can do.
The start of the season was pretty crazy. Wins over Wickham, Carlisle, Reading and Burton took us top of the league and got fans dreaming of the impossible. Did you fall for that trap of maybe secretly thinking that we could do it?
I don't think I did, no. I think the level of excitement that I had is that I screenshot the league table. I saved it for later because I didn't think we were going to be in that position for very long. But you know, it was exciting while it has lasted, but I don't think I let myself believe it was too early in the season. It was way too early. If it had been that in position like midway through the season, then perhaps, but no, that was just too soon for me, I think.
We can't not mention the Carabao Cup run that really got fans thinking, wow, this is a really special team. After beating Crawley and Stevenage in the early rounds, we were then drawn against Premier League side Luton Town, who visited St James Park, and City pulled off one hell of a display. Dimitri Mitchell, the man of the match and the man on all the back pages of the national newspapers, because City had taken Luton's scalp and pulled off the upset of the round.
I think absolutely. I remember just thinking, you know, I'll just take like, you know, we just kind of get a draw and maybe go out on pens, but like a good fight. And what I think a lot of people forget is halfway through that game, Luton didn't play their second round people at all. Like they played their Prem start. I remember Morris came on. I was thinking Tim Krul was in goal, and you just sat there going, we shouldn't beat this team. And then that goal happens. Everyone's bouncing. I think me and Sam stayed for about 30 minutes after the game, just taking it all in. That was just, I think, probably highlight of the season, maybe. It was just a fantastic game, fantastic atmosphere, but, you know, the Big Bank always performs.
Oh, that was incredible. That was so good. I was so nervous before the match, and I don't know why, because obviously on paper you're playing a Premier League side. We're just little old Exeter. So it wasn't as though there was expectation, but because we'd been on such a good run, there was just that hope that perhaps we could pull off the unthinkable. And obviously the atmosphere was absolutely incredible. They gave out all the cards on the Big Bank that you would like hold up and wave around when the players came out. But then that kind of ended up being like a safety net for me, because I just had this piece of card attached to my face for the whole match, and I just couldn't bring myself to take it down. It was just literally covering my mouth and face, just trying to deep breathe. And then obviously when that goal went in, it was insane scenes. The Big Bank was so packed that night. Everyone was going absolutely crazy, and then it was just kind of a case of we've got to try and hold on to this now and see the match out. And I remember waking up the next day and just being like, was that a dream? Did I dream last night? Because it was such a huge highlight. And that, seeing Demi score, and then obviously his tweet went viral with his celebration and everything like that, and people were talking about, I think even my dad, who he's not a football fan at all, I think he even messaged me and was like, oh, I saw Exeter City were on the telly, and I was like, yeah, that's us, we did it.
Maybe we didn't know how good we had it back then, because after that, things really did start to take a turn for the worst. A 13-game winless run, whilst also being knocked out of all our cup competitions. Fans were calling for Gary to go, player morale was at an all-time low, and relegation was a genuine possibility. That was a really tough period to be an Exeter City fan.
Yeah, it was. You know, we look at the games, and I think looking back at it in really big hindsight, it's missed opportunities, because you've got to think where we could be if we did have that slump in form. Like, there's some games I feel like we were really unlucky. Barnsley being one in particular where they scored in the 90th minute. And to be fair, we didn't play bad in that game. It was just we didn't play fantastic either. It was just a bit of a mixed game. That was an unlucky one. I mean, Lincoln, the more you talk about the officiating, let's not talk about that one. And then, yeah, you had, and then there was the other performances as well, which weren't amazing. Two spring into mind of Fleetwood, which I did go to, and, well, Bolton. But, they happen in the season. Just it was a shame it all happened at once.
The winless run was really what took its toll, and you sort of brushed over those Fleetwood and Bolton results, but they were results that really got the fans worried about the potential of relegation this year. The board did pretty well to stick by Gary at what was a really difficult period.
Yeah, I think so. You look at like a lot of clubs, most clubs weren't stuck with it. You look at most runs, they would sack him, and I would argue a lot of teams get it wrong. Got to give credit to the board; they saw the future, and I think they've got it bang on right so far.
I think what made it more difficult is that we'd done so well at the start, as you mentioned, being top of the league at one point, to then go on this disastrous run. I think if we'd have perhaps started off a bit more slow and steady, and then had gone on this bad run, it probably wouldn't have felt as bad. But because we as fans had that taste of excitement and oh my goodness, what could we pull off here? Then that run just made everything seem so much worse, because we literally did go from top to bottom.
After that winless run, we did turn things around. I've spoken to a few different players about this, and they often disagree about when they think the so-called turning point was during the season. I know Czech mentioned how pivotal Stevenage away was at the brilliant point after Jack got sent off, Yannick equalised, and we went away with a bit of optimism. But he also referenced the clean sheet against Pompey, the moment that the team really started to believe that they could compete amongst the best teams in this division. I think some fans will probably say Wickham on Boxing Day, but then you can't forget the hammer blow, which was New Year's Day and the defeat to Reading. What do you think the turning point was?
See, I think the specific turning point was when Bill did the save on Boxing Day against Wickham. Obviously, we were leading the match at that point. It was exciting. We hadn't led a match for quite a long time. And then they got the penalty down the other end. And I honestly think that I celebrated him saving that penalty more than any of the goals, because it was just like, oh, here we go again. And then he saved it, and it was incredible.
Looking at the season, I think you got to look at, well, as you mentioned, Wickham, very big, because that was the break of the form. But then personally, I think where it kind of all started to go right for us was in Carlisle on the 6th of Jan, as that's where we kind of started putting it all together. I mean, yeah, we lost to Blackpool the next game, but then after that, we did go on a bit of a tear with wins against Rovers, Barnsley, and we started going on our tear of more wins, and then that kind of led to the 2024 we've had so far, which is, well, the best away form in League One with Pompey. And I think it's Carlisle is where the turning point was.
Things were a little shaky in late February and early March, with City going 5 without a win. Fans were starting to worry a little bit, but since then, the only way has been up. A brilliant run of results at the tail end of the season to confirm survival, but also smash last year's points tally.
Yeah, that 5 without the win, though, I don't know. I personally, I wasn't worried, because I was just looking at the teams that we were facing at that point. Derby, like, their team is really good. It's a championship team, really. And then you look at Peterborough, well, look at the form they're on now. They're putting 5 past every player. Same with Lincoln, I didn't think it, but the end of the season that we've been able to perform, especially since our 3-0 win against Shrewsbury, which kind of set it all into motion. I just think, it's a fantastic way to end the season. And I think, hopefully, fingers crossed, don't want to jinx anything, but, I always say the most important form of a season to look at is the ending form, because it shows how you go into the next season. Fingers crossed we can carry that on. And, if we don't get as much injuries as we did in that period, maybe next season, fingers crossed, could be the year to go up to the championship.
And now just one game of the season left to play. A chance for supporters to paint the park red for one final time. It will be a bittersweet day as we say goodbye to some familiar faces. But who are you going to miss the most?
I'm not ready to say goodbye to anyone. I get far too attached to every single player that's on the team, and then I never want them to leave. But unfortunately, that's not how football works. For me, Vil has just been incredible. He's a lovely man. He's always got time for people after the match, and it's great with the kids. And I've seen him kind of give his gloves and his shirt to kids in the crowd, and he's been incredible in goal, and I'm in denial. I swore that I'd never fall in love with another goalkeeper the way that I did Cameron Dawson. But here we are. It's happened again, and I'm not prepared. I'm not ready. I don't know. I'm just gonna tell him that he's not allowed to leave. So yeah, definitely Vil. I think obviously the lone players that we know are definitely going. Luke Harris, well, we assume that he's going, but he's been brilliant. I think he's just been getting better and better lately as well. Ryan Woods as well. That'll be sad to see him go. And of course, it's a real shame to kind of say goodbye to some of our academy graduates in Hartridge and Kite. But I feel like, hopefully they can go on to other things and make us proud to say that they used to play for us. So yeah, I am sad about those two, but I hope for them to go on and do good things.
Well, if we're looking at who I'm going to miss the most, I think it's going to be Luke Harris. I think he's just been great. I think he's been that key in midfield that we kind of have needed. Going to have to replace him again, and it's going to be that just gut-in bombshell of losing him.
We will see. I can't help but feel that there's a bit of Welsh bias coming in there.
Oh, absolutely there.
And Latoya, we can't let you leave without talking about the successes of Exeter City women this season. A whole league campaign unbeaten, dropping points in just a single game. Absolutely unreal. City 2 points ahead of Bournemouth in second, knowing that a draw against the Cherries would be enough to secure promotion, providing they win the rest of their games. It's going down to the wire, but what a brilliant story it's been for Exeter City women this season.
Yeah, it's been an incredible season. The fact that they've only dropped points in one match, and that was against Bournemouth, who are also fighting for the title, is incredible. I think they're actually over a whole calendar year in the league are unbeaten. So obviously like the last season and this season, which is just insane to think about. I love watching them. I think there's so much talent on display. Unfortunately, I think it is going to come down to the last game of the season, which is against Bournemouth, who are also pushing for the promotion. Only one team goes up, so there's only going to be one winner. I think Bournemouth have dropped a couple of points. They got a draw a few weeks back, so it kind of takes pressure off slightly. But assuming that we win the rest of our matches, it is going to come down to that massive game on the last day of the season. And I think our girls can do it. I really do. The only thing that kind of worries me is just the nerves of the occasion. When I went to watch them play away at Bournemouth, I think it was really noticeable that both sides were really, really nervy. We went 1-0 down and then managed to kind of kick on and get it back for a draw. But it's been an incredible season for them. Last season, of course, they missed out on promotion on goal difference only. So I really, really hope that this is the season, this is the year, and the girls can do it.
Let's certainly hope so. And what a brilliant season it's been for both the men and the women. Certainly done our club proud. And as of you, Latoya, home and away throughout the season. Brilliant support as always. Thank you so much for joining me on Park Life this week. And we'll see you again next season.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And a massive thank you to Reese for his fantastic support as well. And that brings a season of Park Life to an end. Thank you all so much for the love you've given the pod this year. The amount of people who listen to every episode, win, draw or lose, is extraordinary. So from me to you, thank you. When we started this series ahead of the first game at St James Park all the way back in August, our aim was to bring supporters even closer to the club they love. We've given players the opportunity to speak at length about their time with Exeter City and even caught up with a few legends too. A massive thanks has to go to everybody who's contributed to the pod this season, from Sam and Michael, our two regulars, to everyone else who's given their time to entertain our listeners. Again, thank you. Let's paint the park red on Saturday before enjoying a nice long summer, safe in the knowledge that we'll be playing League One football once again next season. For one last time, thanks for listening. Up the city.
He's been picked out. Socks down to his ankle. Picks out Stansfield.